so much I want to talk to you about, though. These are fucking gorgeous books, and you're a warlock. I don't know how you did this. I mean, thank God it took you 25 years. If you would whip these things out in like 2 years, I'd hate you. They're really, really beautiful. I want to talk about Elba and islands and place. And I'm such a sucker for books that treat like place as a character. I think it's something really hard to do, and I think it's something hard to do without coming across as like heavy-handed or cheesy. And you do it in such a different way in each of these books. And it's just so rare for someone to do it with a place like Elba, which is almost like, well, why haven't they? Because it's such a unique sort of place that we almost don't know anything about, but everyone also knows it when they hear it.
Right.
So first tell us like sort of why Elba, and why was that something that hit you?
I had no idea that Elba was symbolic in the first book until I finished it. And then when I decided to write the second book, I realized, oh my God, I chose a place that symbolizes exile, and that's what I'm writing about. I had no idea.
It's exile, but it's also liberation.
Both, exactly. It is both.
This is what Gray writes in his journal about Elba, which I think is such amazing foreshadowing to all three books, which you didn't know at the time you wrote it.
I had no idea. Before I saw Elba, there was nothing but sea and sky. Then it appeared small on the horizon, an insignificant fleck just below the vanishing point. On water, perspectives are not forged from hard angles. No perfect square is centered on the edge of the sea. The eminence is the same, yet the path variable. Nascent and amorphous, the island bobs up and down, right and left, as the boat stays its course. What would it be like to live on water? The lack of rigidity, a respectful coexistence with impermanence. The sea, the weather, even the coastline. I've never been on an island unless New York counts. But then New York denies, or rather has overcome this ambiguity. It is like the American culture itself, with its uncompromising perenity, the consummate example of nature in defiance.
So amazing that you write that at the very beginning of this trilogy, and all three trilogies are going back and forth between Elba and New York.
I haven't read that since I wrote. I don't think I knew that until you just said that. It's weird. Art is weird when it comes back around like this.
Like, it feels like there's so many layers of like, do I want to be self-exiled in this book? Do I want to be hidden? Do I want to not feel like I am? It's like two sides of a coin of liberation and exile with all of these characters, whether in New York or whether in Elba.
Wow, I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, with Gray, he is going to find liberation. With Brigitte, she is sent there in true exile from her family and then chooses to stay. And then Maria escapes because of the trauma of the island. But her son Paolo wants to return to find his own liberation. I think it represents so much to all of the characters. And I just chose it by happenstance because I tripped on the island and I realized I'm not so sure it was happenstance given the symbolism of the island, how easy it was to turn into the drama.
So tell us a little bit about, what was the genesis of this one? What were you, and it was way back in 2005.
Okay.
What did you want to do with this?
I mean, the first book was, it started the dinner party conversation. What if you were in midlife and you all of a sudden had this reminiscence for the best times of your life, but those weren't in your hometown, or those weren't where you went to school. Those were in a strange place. What would that be like? What would that story be like if you were so disconnected from that place and wanted to go back to that place? That was the first book, and I thought I was done with it. I thought I was done with that book. And then I had an interview at NPR in North Carolina where the interviewer had
and we should say, the other thing is like, there were not a lot of LGBTQ books written at that time that weren't tragic heroes, AIDS stories, coming out stories.
Yeah.
So this was like kind of like a cult classic. You went on a queer bookstore tour, people were lining up in droves, people were ripping your clothes off, they were following you.
I mean,
You had to have security.
It did get attention because it was an unusual book. I mean, when I sent it to every queer bookstore, they're like,
You were early to that
your
wave.
writing is beautiful. We don't see
Yeah.
this. And then to include, some graphics, a graphic sex scene in there.
It's
they're
pretty
like,
steamy. Even if you're straight, it's pretty hot. Like
And then-
you were way ahead of Heated Rivalry.
Oh, thank you. And so it was. I was able to get an NPR interview at that book for that book, which was shocking because it was self-published. And the interview, my dad drove me to the store. My dad and I didn't have much of a relationship. And he drove me to the interview, and the interviewer, like Sarah, outlined something I should read. And he outlined a passage.
Do you want to read it?
No. There was a passage about the breakdown of the protagonist's parents' relationship, which was my parents' relationship. So I'm reading on live air about my father's breakdown of his relationship with his wife. And I was like, can you choose something else? He goes, no, we built the interview around this. And I'm like, and I went out of the interview and I see my dad and I said, what did you think? He said, well, you said a lot, but otherwise it was fine. And then in the car, he said, and I'm not gonna cry, He said, have you thought about writing a sequel? My dad didn't really care about much that I did ever. And I was shocked. I was like, you've read this book? He's like, of course I've read it. And I think it deserves a sequel. And I said, I've not thought about a sequel. He goes, well, what about a prequel? And I thought, I'm done with Gray's life, but I love Brigitte. So why not create another intersecting novel about my favorite character? So it's why the second novel is dedicated to my dad, which is shocking because he's the nascence of that second novel. And just to finish that story, when I went back, and Nick's involved in this story, when I also got interviewed by the same guy for the second book, and I went back, and the first thing he opens with, he goes, tell us the story of how you decided to do this, because he knew it. And my dad had just died. And again, it was on live radio, and I couldn't speak. And I just started tearing up, and he's like, live radio. And I finally was able to speak and did the interview, and I went out of that interview with Nick sitting there, and first thing he says is, cry baby.
Brigitte's story. Because you suddenly go from steamy coming of age and now everyone's like, dude, I need another fix. And then you're like, how about straight woman historical fiction?
I know, exactly. It really didn't do my readership any good. Like, all my gay male readers were like, oh, come on. And where's that next sex scene? Well, it's not in Ere I Saw Elba, let me tell you. So I love Brigitte in Abel Was I, and when I tracked back from the age that I had set her in Abel Was I realized that she had been born right before the end of World War II, and I built that into the story. I mean, you asked me when I first met you, you're like, why are so many people obsessed with writing World War II stories? I'm like, I wasn't. It was forced upon me. And so the book starts with her and her family.
But you do it totally differently, because you said it, you begin it in an internment camp in Paris, which is what I thought was so brilliant. It's like the beginning of it we never hear.
No, she goes with her family. They're put into a Jewish internment camp, Trancy, outside of Paris, and they all get released like a week later, supposedly unscathed, but they're not unscathed because they experience this awful thing. Her mother, who is a Jew, there's a photo of her taken in the courtyard of Trancy waiting for her husband, and her mother's beautiful, and Dior sees the photo and hires her as the only Jew new look model. So she becomes notorious for being the face of reconciliation after the war, which masks a lot of crap that's going on in their household. And then a year later, Brigitte ends up pregnant at 14, and the family ships her off to Elba to family friends to have the baby and come home. She finds some stuff out about her parents that she's like, I'm never going home, and stays on Elba. So that's the book. There's something that happens at the end of the book that challenges her belief of what she thought about the parents, but that's sort of the setup. And I mean, when I started the book, I knew I wanted to write about Brigitte, and as I was writing, it became clear that Elba was about exile and about healing. It became clear.
But it's also about choice and freedom.
Exactly, about all of that. It is about all of that, and it became clear to me in that book, I guess, why Elba had chosen me as a place.
So this book, to me, I mean, your writing is truly beautiful.
Thank you.
I mean, like, this is literary fiction. It's really beautiful, but this one in particular is one of my favorite genres of book, where it's like House of the Edge of Night. It's like 100 Years of Solitude. It is one of those multi-generation spanning epics where you fall into a family for generations, and you live, and they always are in a place, and the place is always part of it. And you live with them for so long, and their children and their children's children, and their miseries and their sorrows, you do that so beautifully here. And I feel like I'm always, like, Pachinko's another example of that. I'm always looking for more of those books. And like, if you also love those books, like, and you know people who love those books, then you're gonna need to buy 75 of these. I don't know if we have enough.
I chose the story for the third book comes from the titles. So the first book and the second book form a palindrome. Ava was I, ere I saw Elba. So when I was interviewed for Ere I Saw Elba, people were like, well, what's the third book going to be called? And you've used the entire palindrome. And I'm like, well, the third book, I'm going to take the center of the palindrome, which is I, ere I, which is I before I, which then I thought, well, in Italy, they say I-E. So I'm like, it's not like I, ere I, it's I before E. And I'm like, wow, that sets it up perfectly for a person struggling to be integrated into the American culture. So it's actually the title that pushed me toward the story, interestingly enough.
I think your writing is so good at the third, though.
I think it's better.
Maybe it's because you have more emotional distance from the character.
Huh, maybe.
Your writing feels just like sculptural in the third.
Maybe. I mean, I do think I've improved as a writer, at least I hope so. You know, there's a saying that design within constraints is easier than design with an empty canvas. I had so many constraints on this story. I already had Brigitte. Yeah. I already had Maria and Paolo. I had Gray. I'm like, how do I fit a new story into all of these constraints that makes it a story worth reading? That was the hard part. I'm like, and then I thought it was going to be about Paolo and Maria, and then when I started writing, it became about Paolo and his uncomfortable coming of age.
Yeah. It's such a journey that Paolo's on around his own sexuality, and it's convoluted and it's difficult. It pains me, and I just am wondering, and it's not how I experience you.
Right.
And you just made a comment which surprised me earlier, that you don't you resonate least with Paolo of all the protagonists of the three books. So I'm kind of curious what brought you to this journey and why that interests you.
I mean, when I started the book, I thought it was going to be about Paolo and Maria, and their story together, and then. There's something that happened in the dreams that confuses Paolo's sexual awakening, and he can't really figure it out, and it sort of takes him on a journey, which is an unusual journey, trying to figure it out. And I was like, could that happen? I mean, my dreams have had a powerful impact on my life, but if I had really, really formative dreams during the time that I was coming of age, and it felt like, and he didn't have a dad to talk to about any of this either. So these dreams were leading him down this path. And I felt like that was what I should explore. I don't know, it's not my sexual history, as you know.
Yeah.
I mean, but it felt like something I should explore, because I feel like people's coming of age can be changed by a lot of different things, by trauma, by abuse, and how does that inform who they sexually become? So that's what I was playing around with.
I think one of the themes across the 3 books is the revelation of a secret, and in some cases it's like they didn't even know it was a secret, or it was a secret that came out. So I was wondering if you could talk about that a little.
Well, I think it's the power of a secret that's been kept for so long. And that you're right, and that you may not even know is a secret. In the second book, you have no idea that there's a secret. It's not even a secret, it's a misperception in that book. And that you forged your whole life living based on this one perception, and then all of a sudden that perception is changed. What does that do to you? Does it liberate you? Or does it then cause you to cave back in? I chose liberation in every single one.